I have a feeling there must be a lot of extra meat going on. Okay, does anybody remember where we left off? I don't think we got there. Okay, geweldig. So we learned Dilma Kazayis B'chtei Achilas Pras. Okay. The Leka Kazayis B'chtei Achilas Pras. That's right. So we were learning about, the last thing we learned was about that the Nizid, you're allowed to eat in the, you're allowed to eat in the Nizid, a coin can eat Nizid Adema, a Nizid that's mixed with Truma, because it will not make him Tameh, even though he's eating Shlishi, because it's not really a Shlishi, because the whole mixture only has a small amount of truma. Shlishi shall truma atzma. What if somebody eats shlishi shall truma itself? So we're not talking about chulin hanasu al tyrus truma. We're talking about truma itself. Somebody eats truma itself. Aser lechoil. Now he himself becomes a shlishi l'tuma, and for that reason he's not allowed to eat truma. Umuter liga, but he is allowed to touch truma, because what is the end of the line for truma? Shlishi. So if he ate a shlishi, even if he became a shlishi, he can't be matama anything else. But he's not allowed to eat. He's not allowed to eat a truma anymore. Zok Rashi. I'm sorry. That's from yesterday. So Zok the Gemara, the Ula of Itzrich Rabbi Yonasan. Ula, here Rabbi Yonasan is telling us that Eichel Shlishi Truma Atzma is also Lechel. What did Rabbi Yonasan tell us yesterday? Rabbi Yonasan told us yesterday. Rabbi Yonasan told us now, right? Also, Ula told us yesterday that Eichel Shlishi Shalchulin Shenasu Al Tyrus Truma Nifsal Gufim Lechel Truma. So what's the chiddush over telling us that Eichel Truma Atzma is Nifsal, meaning Truma, versus Eichel Chulun Shnasu Al Tayus Truma? Zok Gemara, Ve'idrich the Ula, Ve'idrich Rabbi Yonasan. The Imi the Ula, which is talking about someone who ate Chulun Shnasu Al Tayus Truma, Havamina Hanimili B'Chulun Shnasu Al Tayus Truma. I would have thought only there are you prohibited from eating Truma, that's it. But achol truma. But if you actually had actual truma that was a shlishi, maybe b'negia nami osir, maybe it would also be osir to touch truma. So therefore, you need the halacha of Rabbi Yonasan that even if you ate actual truma, it's only achilas truma that you're prohibited from, and it's just Rabbi Yonasan. That's why you need Rabbi Yonasan. Rabbi Yonasan, if you only knew that if you ate truma mamish, it's also liga, then havamina hanimili truma. Avo chulin. But if you ate chulun shenasal tayus truma and you ate a shlishi, maybe it does nothing at all. Vachilinam is shari. Zakmar trichi. That's why we need halacha both times. Yosy Rabbitu bar Shmuel bar Marsa kameid Rav Nachman the Yosy v'kamar. He said the following halacha: Ha'oichel shlishi shel chulin shenasu al tayus hakodesh. So now we're no longer talking about shenas al tayus truma, but it's shenas al tayus hakodesh. And just to tickle our memories from yesterday, we had a machlokes. We said Rabbi Yeshua hold there's no such thing as chulun shenas al tayus hakodesh. There's only something that's nas al tayus truma, and that all came up to be because we were looking for shad in our Mishnah, and we said shad in our Mishnah where you can have a shlishi l'tuma would be speaking by chulun shenasu al tayus truma. Forget, we said it's chulun shenasu al tayus hakodesh. And it can't be going according to Rabbi Yeshua because Rabbi Yeshua holds there's no such thing as chulun shenasu al tayus hakodesh, and that's what Rabbi Bar Chana said. And Ula said, no, I hold even Rabbi Yeshua holds there is something called chulun shenasu al tayus hakodesh. Right, that was the shayla we had yesterday. So now we have a new halacha ha'oichel shlishi shel chulun shenasu al tayus hakodesh tahar lechel b'kodesh. He is allowed to eat kodesh. Why? She'ein loch davar. Even if you hold there is such a thing as chulun shenas al tayus hakodesh, even if you hold like that, nevertheless, if you ate a shlishi of chulun shenas al tayus hakodesh, you would be mutter to eat Kodesh. If you become a Shlishi, you're then going to make what you eat a Revi, which means you're going to be Pasal Kachim. How could that be allowed? The Teretz is the Revi by Kodesh, the end of the line for Kodesh, carries a leniency. What is the leniency? That the only thing that can make a Revi by Kodesh is actual Kachim, that's a Shlishi. She'ein lach tov v'shaish Revi by Kodesh, el Kodesh mekudesh bilvad. He doesn't say el hektish. He says el Kodesh mekudesh bilvad. If you found Kodesh mekudesh, that's a Shlishi, only that will be Metama Kachim to make it into a Revi. If you ate Shlishi, and because of that you're a Shlishi, that doesn't make you Kodesh mekudesh. So what is Kodesh mekudesh? Zok Rashi, Ella Kodesh mekudesh, Ella im haya Shlishi shel Kodesh mekudesh. Zok Rashi, High Shlishi of the Revi Kodesh. The fact that you can go up to Revi Kodesh is not a deraisa. It's Maili Hi derabanan. It's only a Chumer derabanan. The Gabemailos the Chayver Kodesh Kotanilchu. Okay, now we're going to skip down to the end of Rashi. Kodesh Kodesh. I'm sorry, it was the next Rashi. Kodesh Kodesh. Kodesh Gomar Shakidish Gufay. It means Kachim that has Kedushas Aguf. Kigayin Basar Carbon. The Chalois Atoida Shenishchat Hazevach Aleim. We're talking about Kodesh that's Mamish Kedushas Guf, like a carbon post Shchita. So this is meat of a carbon, literally. So if you had meat of Bedekabayis, or you had a live animal, Pshulim Mikdoshin, all that doesn't count. It has to be meat of a kosher or carbon, other than the fact that it became tummy. But if you just took a piece of meat and you said Hareza Kodesh, loy, that would not be Metama Aravi. Since it won't make a Revi, loy pasal lagaver, it won't pasal a person either. Because the obvious diak is madich, even if chulin shenas al taris kodesh won't pasal you from eating kodesh, surely if you ate chulin shenas al taris truma, because truma is always a lesser madriga, like we learned yesterday. A shmira for truma would not be adequate as a shmira for kodesh. On that, Frek Rami Bar Chama, Maser Rami Bar Chama, the brayso that we learned yesterday, Shlishi, this is Rabbi Yeshua talking, Shlishi, Sheni L'Kodesh. If you ate Shlishi, that makes you into a Sheni L'Kodesh, right? We learned because of the Gzeira, because if the Shlishi would have touched something that was wet, it would have made the water into a Rishon, and then the Rishon would have turned around and made the object into a Sheni. So therefore, a Shlishi, if you eat a Shlishi, you become a Sheni. Lagabe Kodesh. So you will be able to be Matama. If you ate a Shlishi, you will be able to be Matama Kodesh. What is it of the Shlishi that you ate? So it says Shlishi Sheni L'Kodesh V'Sheni L'Truma. What did Rabbi Yeshua say himself? These are Rabbi Yeshua's words. V'Chulin Shenasu Al Tayas Truma. So you see, if you even ate Shlishi from Chulin Hanasu Al Tayas Truma, you're going to be Matama Kodesh. So if you ate Shlishi from Chulin Shenasu Al Tayas Kodesh, there you should surely be Matama Kodesh. So tomorrow Amai, Halav Kodesh Mekudeshu. Eating Chulin Shenasu Al Tayas Truma, which is a Shlishi Latuma, it's not Kodesh Mekudesh. So how could you be a Sheni LaKodesh? How could you be Matama Kodesh if only Kodesh Mekudesh could? Amalei, Hanach Latruma, Shetarasa, Tumahi Eitzel HaKodesh. We just learned this yesterday, the same svara. The Baal Truma is considered extremely inadequate of a Shmira compared to the Shmira required for Kachim. There, even though it's not Kodesh Mekudesh, but it's so toxic, Kila, Truma, or Chulin Shenas Al Tayas Truma, its Shmira is so toxic and inferior, Lagabe Kodesh, that yes, Chulin Shenasu Al Tayas Truma, if it's a Shlishi and you eat it, you will not be able to eat Kachim, and you will be Mitama Kachim. Uminah Tamer, and where do I get the Shram that anything Truma related is considered highly inferior to Kachim? It's not be learned. Big de Ama Oretz Medris Leprushin. The halacha is that if an Amoritz has clothing, and it's possible that his wife, who was a nida, sat on the clothing, which would make the clothing into an avatum. Now, since Amiratim are not concerned,
clothing becomes an avatum.
Yeah, b'mishkav of a moishav, if she sits on it, lies on it. So therefore, if you're a makbid on keeping things in your house tahor, you are not going to go near any clothing of an amarit, because who knows if that clothing is tamei b'tayris avatum. Big day prushim. What about people who are extremely makbid to eat their chulin b'kedusha? Nevertheless, medrash loichli truma. A kohen, if he touches your beged, you could be the most nizer person in keeping tuma out of your house. But if a kohen touches your beged, the kohen won't be able to eat truma anymore. And then you have big eichel truma medrash lekodesh. You can have a kohen who eats truma and he's so makbid to have no tuma in the house. His begadim would be considered tamei tumas medrash for a kohen who eats kachim. So you see, even though you have a kohen who's been so careful to keep no tummy in his house, we look at him like he's an amoritz, compared to somebody who eats kachim. So you see that it's totally inferior, and that's why it makes sense that someone who ate a shlishi latuma, chulun shenasu, altaris truma will be mitama kachim, while somebody who ate a shlishi latuma of chulun shenasu altaris kodesh would not be mitama. Amarava, midrash's karmet. You're telling me that based on the halacha of tumas medrash, that's going to define who is more chomer than the other. And because of this medrash issue, we're going to say that the truma will be metama kachim because it's inferior in its shmira. No, you can't say that. Shiny midrashos by tumas medrash, it's a whole different reason that we're concerned. It's shema teishev alein ishtei nida. Clothing, yes, it might have been sitting on the bed, and his wife could have sat on it. There's a special chash that's common. Avol beperi loyamina. My Paris, which is what we're talking about here, Paris became tummy to Mosaiklin. That there's a good. They're very nizer on their Paris. Even the person who keeps chulun al kedushas truma or al kedushas kodesh, that's much more carefully guarded than begadim. And yes, by begadim we don't consider it guarded properly. But when it comes to payers, people guard things properly. Zokt Rashi, Shema Teshav, Shema Yoshua. Maybe prior to now she sat on it, and that's why we're choshed that her begadim are tummy now. The avagav the oichle truma mizdar b'shaper. Even though people who eat truma will be very careful that a nida shouldn't walk on their clothing. Miyu lagabe kodesh, but when you're comparing it to kodesh, loy have shmira, and still v'chashinon hoil utuma matzuyi. Since nida is common, and it's very possible that a nida walked on certain clothing. Avol b'peri, when it comes to peri, the aintum osan matzuya, where it's not so common that peri should be tamei because people are very careful with it. Therefore, shmiras truma is a shmira lakodesh lamai dinatre for whatever you watched it of. Dimkain truma tahira nami tema the matama kodesh. If you're going to say that truma is so inferior, so then even if you had truma that was tar and gantin, if it touched kodesh, you should say that it's matamit. If you really hold that the shmira for the Paris would be inferior. Elamai, when it comes to Paris, you don't make these distinctions. When it comes to Paris, you don't make these distinctions, and therefore, we have an issue here with Rabbi Yitzchak's halacha, because Rabbi Yitzchak told us dafke if it's kodesh mekudesh, right? And the question is, since we just said that the shmira for truma is not inferior, it's not inferior because by Paris you watch it carefully. So the question comes back: why did Rabbi Yitzchak say that only kodesh mekudesh will be matama? Why wouldn't truma? Why do we say that only kodesh mekudesh is matama? Why don't we say that truma is also matama, or chulun shenas altar truma is matama? Zok Gemara, Rabbi Yitzchak beperi nami amar. Rabbi Yitzchak holds no, there is that distinction, and by Paris also, and therefore it makes sense that someone someone who ate chulin shenasu al tyrus truma, or someone who ate truma tameya, that was a shlishi l'tuma, he will passel kodesh, but not kachim only if it's kodesh mekudesh. Okay. Master Rabbi Yirmiyah Midifti. So Rabbi Yirmiyah Midifti has a kasha. Again, what did Rabbi Yitzchak say? Rabbi Yitzchak said that the only thing that can make a reveal of kodesh tamei is kodesh mekudesh. That's a shlishi, not chulin shenasu al taras kodesh. Umiamrinon beperi. Do you actually say by Paris that the shmira of the truma is inferior? Right, that was Rabbi Yitzchak Shita, and that's how he explains away why chulin shenasu al taras truma will be a problem, even though chulin shenasu al taras kodesh won't be a problem. V'yotanan we learned im amar hifrashti l'soicha revius kodesh. Now, an amoritz is normally not nemon for truma semaisris, but he is nemon for kachim. They're afraid of kachim. They're not going to mess with kachim. So look at Rashi. The chaymer b'kodesh in Chagiga Tanan we learned be Yehuda nemonin amei haaretz al taharis yain linesachim im amru tayrenin. The amoritz brings wine and he wants to use it for nesachim, and he tells you, "I'm telling you it's tahar. You can trust me. You could trust him, even though you would never trust him on his truma, but you could trust him on his wine, because when it comes to kachim, they don't mess around." The himnu rabbanon, the reason why the rabbanon were believed him is Kodesh shelo yehei kol echad hoylech ubayne bama la'atzmai v'soyer faradum la'atzmai. If you're not going to, I'll even accept his yain nesachim, then people are going to say, I'll do it myself. So therefore, they were miming the people about the tahira of kachim. Aval ala truma ein emonin. For truma, they're not believed, except ela b'shas hagitois v'abadim, meaning during the time when they're processing and pressing the wine, there everyone's them on kedusha, because during that period of time, everyone's going to be nizer. But over hagitois v'abadim, once that season passed, v'aviu lechavesh shal yain the truma, and Namoritz brings a kohen a chavetz of truma, harei ze lo yikabel himenu. The kohen can't accept it. You know why? Because this might be truma tmeya. However, v'im omer lo hifrashti l'soich chavezeh revius l'nesachim. But if they said mixed in to this barrel is kachim as well, then nemen al kulam. Then the kohen will believe that it's tar umekabel kohen l'shois. So you might ask, how could a kohen drink this? There's kachim in it, right? So Tosfos says you'd have to use breira. It would have to be the Chagabna, where he said one revius of wine that I'll pick out later should be the kachim. So in such a case, since there's kachim in the barrel, he would be trusted that it's kodesh. So Zok to Gemara. When we are reading Beperi, do you say by Paris that there's the shmira for truma is by default inferior of the shmira for kachim? But now we learned Neman, he's believed. Even, why would he believe? There's truma here. If in your assessment, even if you watch truma to keep it tar, it would still be metama. It would still be metama the kachim. Here it says, if he's kodesh, neman v'loika metama le truma le kodesh. The shmir of truma is not enough. The omrit tarasa tumehi etel hakdish. If you're going to say that there's an inferior layer of shmira when it comes to truma, and even truma tahira is going to be metaba hektish, well, that the tama truma hektish. Why would you say the fact there's hektish in here is a raya that the truma is tar? Even if he watched the truma is going to be matama the kodesh. Omerlei, there's a very big difference. Tuma b'chibur and karmen. Here it's mamish together. It's mamish together in the same barrel. Tuma b'chibur and shiny. When it's mamish in one medium, it's one barrel of wine mixed together. Shiny. The migu de mehemen hakodesh mehemen nami truma. There you'll say in the same barrel he's watching the kodesh, therefore the truma would be protected as well. Let's see Rashi. B'chiburin sheshneyan b'chli echad tamid. They're stored together in one thing. So let's have a quick look over here at Taishus. The imam Rashi l'saycher v'yis kodesh neman. V'im tamer v'chtaishus heich yechol koyin truma kiven the kodesh muraba. How can he drink this truma? There's kachim mixed in. Yishleimer l'hayidei breira sheyoymer reviyish and the asad lav v'shei kodesh. Exactly like we said earlier. Titma truma l'kodesh. The Gemara is asking if you hold by default that the shemira for truma is inferior to that of kodesh. So even if you have kodesh mixed in, you should say that the truma is matama the kodesh. Shiny hacha sheshamra al tires kodesh. Here he watched the whole barrel al tires kodesh. So he watched even the truma portion with the level of shemira for kodesh, and therefore only manav shech. Kimin the mehemin slei kodesh mehemin nami truma. Forget, you should use the nemanos that he has the gabe kodesh, and here is the all in one big barrel, and he watched it all together. As part of his watching of the revius of wine, he's automatically protecting the whole barrel with the level of shmira of kedusha of kachim. The Yishleimar, the Salkadaitach, the Havamini of the Gemara, before the Gemara said Mechubor and Shiny, was that the Kivon the Trumas Chaver Nami Mitama Kodesh. The about the Truma of a Chaver is also Matama Kodesh, which is what we said, Mishum de Tarosa Tuma Eitala Kodesh, maybe here, Lo Shaykh Hacha Lahem Nilama Oretz, Mishum Shalo Yehi Boina Bamala Atzman. You can't trust him based on this Namonis, that we want to prevent him from building his own Bama. And therefore, there was a Havamini that it should be Matama. Inami Park, or maybe the Kasha is the Havadal Mechash, Shema Nasan Kodesh Bechavis, Acher Shenasan Matruma. Maybe put the Kodesh there afterwards. So there was a point in time where that Truma didn't have the superior Shmira of Kachim, and therefore it will be Matam. And with the Gemara, Bechibur and Shiny, when they're mamish in one barrel, you treat it like it had the Shmira of the Kachim. Okay, Kavalti. And that's why over there, the Chaver is Neman, but otherwise, Rabbi Yitzchak will maintain that the level of Shmira for payers of Truma will be on a lower madrega. Zog to Gemara, Maser Rav Huna bar Nosen, Hasheni shebechulin mitame mashke. If you have sheni of chulin, it will be mitame mashke chulin, because we have a rabbanon that it automatically makes the mashke into a rishon. So sheni by chulin you could have. If sheni of chulin touches mashke, that mashke becomes a rishon. Upaisel oichle truma, and will passel oichle truma. So if oichle truma eat sheni shebechulin, they're not allowed to eat truma. Vashlishi mitame mashke kodesh, and if you have shlishi latuma, Rashi says even shlishi shebechulin. So if I have shlishi shebetuma of chulin, which I don't know how you have shlishi of chulin, which we'll see in a second, mitame mashke kodesh, upaisel oichle kodesh. So it's mitame mashke chulin, and if someone eats a shlishi of chulin, he's going to be possible to eat kachim. Now the question is, there is no such thing as shlishi b'chulin. So what does it mean if you ate shlishi b'chulin? So now you have a meforisha brisa that states that if you ate shlishi of chulin shenasu al tayar kodesh, you're going to passel truma. You're going to pass a kodesh, not allowed to eat kodesh. It says beferish, v'ashlishi v'tam mashka kodesh u'poisel oichle kodesh v'chulun shenas al tarsa kodesh. If you eat a shlishi of chulun shenas al tarsa kodesh, you're not allowed to eat kachim mixed into a vri. Didn't Rabbi Yitzchak say that's only by kodesh v'kodesh? So it's clearly a stira to what Rabbi Yitzchak said. Zok, you're right, Tanoi. In fact, Rabbi Yitzchak's halacha is not agreed by everybody, because this brisa clearly says that even chulun shenas al taras hakodesh could be metama kodesh and make it into a ri. So who is the Tana that in fact does hold? Who in fact is the Tana that holds like Rabbi Yitzchak? The Tanya chulun shenas al taras hakodesh harei and kechulin, they have the din of chulun. As Rashi says, ve'ein boyin l'chlal shlishi, and therefore they will not be able to come to a shlishi, even though it's nasu al taras hakodesh.
You can't make a review.
Right. Vein boin lechalal shlishi cannot become a shlishi. Chulin cannot become a shlishi, and therefore can't make revi. Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Tzaddik Harein ketruma v'bilach truma latami shnayim v'lifsay lechot. What does latami shnayim v'lifsay lechot mean? So Rashi, it could make a rishon and the sheni, and it could passel a shlishi. So let's say Harein ketruma could mafarish latami shnayim v'lifsay lechot kloimer harishon v'asheni by chulin shenas al taras hakodesh harishon and the sheni are tamei. Bahen v'ashlishi pasal v'enyatami. But if you have a shlishi from chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh, that makes it pasal, but it doesn't make it tummy. So if a sheni of chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh, if a piece of sheni touches a piece of meat, it will make it into a shlishi, but the shlishi will not make a revi. The enyatami lasts revi afilu b'chodesh. So zokt Rashi b'chivin dashminam b'ditu the l'shayich bu revi. Since we're saying that by chulin shenas al taras hakodesh, shlishi is the end of the line and not revi, sulay mikri shlishi the two tame el apostle. Right? We know that if something is tame but it cannot be betame something else, that's identified as a apostle, not as a tame. But the avid revi b'kodesh. The high time the svirle kirab yitzchak, and this is a time that holds like a yitzchak that only kodesh mekudesh shlishi could make revi b'kodesh, but chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh shlishi would not be able to make a revi tummy. The Masnisin Kamaisa and the Tana, the first Mishnah, Polagale will argue on Rabbi Yitzchak because we brought the brisa that says Rashi is a Mishnah or Tana Masnisin. No, the first one was a Mishnah. So the kasha from Rav Huna bar Nosson was from a Mishnah that says beferish that the shlishi is going to be mitama kodesh. Okay, Gavalt. So we have a machlokes if shlishi by chum shenasu al taras hakodesh could be mitama kodesh or not. Maybe you dafka need kodesh makodesh. A lot of fine nuances in the general halachas of the chastum of a tire. Reb Shimon Omer huchshu b'shchita. So now we're going back to the Mishnah and we're saying that the shchita of a behema of kachim, the shchita of a behema of kachim will automatically be machshur l'kabel tumah. No, I'm sorry, I'm making a mistake. The Mishnah is speaking about chulin. We brought multiple rise. The Mishnah is speaking about chulin, and even there, even without dam, the mere fact that you shechted the animal is machshur l'kabel tumah. Amar Basi, Amar Hayu Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon used to say shchitasay machsheres v'loy dam. So he's not just saying that not only will dam be a mashke to be machshur and meat l'kabel tumah, even shchita will. That's not what Rabasi is learning. Rabasi is saying that Reb Shimon says shchita machesh v'loy dam, meaning if you had dam that fell on meat, it would not be machshur l'kabel tumah. It's only shchita that will do that. Zokt Rashi, shchita machsheres is a basal tumah the mashval ha'ikla, but v'loy dam. V'nafkamina the l'nafal dam shchita al azroim shalei hochshu. Let's say I had dam shchita that fell on Paris that were never hochshu l'kabel tumah. The loy mikri dam shchita mashka. Dam shchita is not called a mashka. It's not one of the. It's not considered one of the seven mashkim, and therefore it will not be mashka. Lema Messiah. Let's see if we can bring a right to Ravasi. It says Reb Shimon Omer huchshu b'shchita. My love, it's exclusive. B'shchita v'loy b'dam. No, maybe when he says huchshu b'shchita, he means af b'shchita. Of course, with the regular mashkin, but in addition to that, shchita would also be shchita. So Rashi af b'shchita hechad lekadam. But lo'olam ki ikadam nami machshir says right. Tashma. Amalam Reb Shimon. Shimon commented back to the Chachamim. You're telling me that if there's no dam, it's not going to be huchshir l'kabel tumah, the meat of the animal. V'chi dam machshir. Is dam really what's machshir? V'aloi shchita machsheres. So that very much sounds like he's saying dam is not machshir, and it's only shchita. That's not a raya either. Hachi kamer lehem. V'chi dam bilvad machshir, av shchita nami machsheres. Tashma, try another raya. Reb Shimon Omer, dam hameis einoi machshir. The dam of a mace, Rashi says, behema shemeisa me'ela. So what if an animal pegered? It died on its own, and its dam will not be machshir l'kabel tumah. My love, hadam shchita machshir. But the fact that Reb Shimon is careful to say, Dafka, the animal that died of natural causes, its dam is not machshir, it's machshir the dam shchita would be machshir. So you have a raya, not like a basi. You have a raya that dam shchita is also machshir. So Dr. Merloy, that's not the dik you should make. Hadam chalolim machshir. You should make a diak that dam chalolim is machshir, which means an animal was killed but was not shechted. If an animal was killed but not shechted, that would be machshir, but not dam shchita. Avol dam shchita my loy machshir. If that's the case, lishma'inin dam shchita. Why did Reb Shimon say a smaller chiddush? That dam ameis ain't machshir. Reb Shimon should have said even dam shchita is ain't machshir, and then we would say, but dam chalolim is machshir. The choshkin dam ameis would not be machshir. Zakt Gemara, no. Reb Shimon needed to tell us his chiddush, b'davke that dam hameis is not machshir l'kabel tumah. Dam hameis it's trichalei. Why? So gedai the chamina mali katli iu mali katli malach hamoves. I would have thought shchita you're shachting. That's something else. But what's the difference between dam chalolim and if the malach hamoves killed it? Either way, it died. Why would you say it's not machshir kamash malon? So I would have thought that there's a similarity between dam hameis and dam chalolim. And that is what's the difference? You didn't shecht it. It died. What's the difference if it died because it got injured, or if it died because of natural causes? Either way, it should be the same. Zokt Rashi, Salka Daitach, Dama Meis Odif Dahave. I'm sorry, that's later on. Okay, go on. Zokt Gemara Vaiter Toshma. Rav Shimon Omer Dam Magefasoi Einay Machshir. Magefasoi means dam makas behema. So that means the animal is still alive, but the animal got wounded. Now it's bleeding. Will that blood be machshel kabatuma? Reb Shimon says it will not be machshel kabatuma. My lab will make the same deal again. Hadam shchita will be machshel. Dr. Malloy, hadam chalal machshel. Aval dam shchita my loy machshel. So the same kasha. L'shemini dam shchita the kol shgei dam magefasoi is not machshel. So Gemara, no, dam magefasoi I would have had reason to believe is machshir more than dam shchita. Dam magefasoi tzrichali. So gedai de chamina mali katli kulei, mali katli palga. What's the difference if I kill the animal fully? Dam chalolim, which would make dam that's machshir l'kabutuma. Injuring an animal is called katla palga. It's also a little bit of a killing. Therefore, it should also be umashir dam chalolim the machshir. I'm sorry, mali katli palga. Let's see Rashi. So gedai de chamina dam hameis odif. A dead animal is better to have a dam chalolim. Because it's like dam chalolim. The mali katli iu kula, what's the difference if it's fully killed or not killed? So therefore you would have thought the dam hameis could be machshir even though shchita cannot. Well, dam shchita le mikri chalal elo zavuach. That's called zavuach. So that would not trigger a tumah. Okay, so at the end of the day, we know that dam shchita, according to Reb Shimon, is not machshir, and there's a chiddush to dam chalolim is machshir. The question is dam hagefa and dam hameis. Reb Shimon needed to tell us that those are not machshir because those are maybe more similar to dam chalolim than to dam shchita. So that's why he had to tell us a special chiddush. But it still remains that dam shchita will not be a mashkel a kabel tuma according to Reb Shimon. Fragt Gemara umay shadam chalolim the machshir. Why would you say that dam shchita is not machshir, but dam chalolim is machshir? Either way, it's a dead animal. The dam chalolim yishta. So you see that the Torah refers to a killed animal, a murdered animal, as yishta, as a mashke. So you see the Torah compares it to mayim. So maybe dam shchita should also be machshir something l'kabel tuma. Hahul mystery domon l'psuli hamakdoshim b'hanol hudasa. There, the pasuk saying al earth is referring to psuli mikdoshim sheniftu. We know the halacha is if an animal is a carbon and it gets a mum, so what do we do with it? Repite it. What are you allowed to do with the meat? We're going to see in a second. The Torah says that it's asher begizav avoda. It says you should eat it. Tamei v'Torah Yaakov chativ v'chayil. All you're allowed to do is eat it. It says it says you're allowed to eat it, but you're not allowed to shear it for its wool. You're not allowed to take its milk. You're only allowed to shecht it and eat it. That's the only thing you're allowed to do. So you would think that maybe its dam is also osur bana. So since you're not allowed to use this animal any other way, you're only allowed to eat it. So maybe daman liboy kfura. Maybe even the blood of the animal you're not allowed to eat. I'm sorry, eat for sure not. You're not allowed to use it to your benefit. You're not allowed to have enough from it. Kamash malon that it's not the dam is not osur b'hana. But you don't learn from that pasuk that dam is a mashke to be mashke lekabutuma. You only learn that it's not osur b'hana, and therefore dam shchitas of Rab Shimon is not mashke lekabutuma, but dam chalalim is mashke lekabutuma. Okay, we'll stop here. Oh, the Tumah Tiger